The views expressed on the Badge to the Bone podcast, while often accurate and sometimes even funny, are not intended to represent the official positions of any law enforcement, public safety agency, or their employees. So lighten up. This podcast contains mature themes, strong language, violence, and nudity. Okay, maybe not the last two. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Badge to the Bone. I'm Denny.
I'm Al.
We are your hosts, bringing you another episode. And as always, we have lots to talk about. So let's not waste any time and go ahead and jump right on in.
So Denny, we're here. We're here for episode 2.
We're back. We are back.
Yeah. I know there was a little bit of a longer gap than we might have otherwise liked, but we did buy that book, Podcasting for Dummies.
We did.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, well, Denny got the Cliff Notes, and then we set it on fire. So yeah, nobody said this was easy, but you know what? This is important. So we're gonna keep trying. We're at it. Keep plugging forward.
And as we're bringing that up, I know I promised we were going to have Dr. Greenberg, police psychologist, on this episode. However, last minute, he did get called away to something that was going to cut into the time that we have set to record.
This is what happens when we book in-demand guests.
He is in demand. He is busy. So we apologize for that. But, our schedules run busy as well. So we are scheduled to put something out here. So we're going to just go on with it.
So we had this wonderful guest planned, and for reasons outside of our control or his, it fell through. But we pressed forward, and instead of listening to a highly educated guy with a PhD, wonderfully articulate, funny, charming, you have to listen to us two mopes here for however long we're here today.
That really just about sums it up.
Yeah. So, So we were planning on talking to Dr. Greenberg today, and Dr. Greenberg is a very well-known, well-respected law enforcement, public safety psychologist in our area. So since he's not here, we're actually just going to talk about him and talk about, more like talk about the police psychologists and why do we need them? Do we need them? And what is getting us to the point where we're even having to have this discussion in the first place?
Right. No, and I think it's probably good that we do have this discussion before he even comes on, because, my concern is that there is a stigma when it comes to psychologists, and particularly police psychologists, and not even really just police in the first responder community, period. So there's a bit of a stigma. And I think people are concerned about, am I going to go sit in this office? This guy's going to shrink me for an hour and tell me that I didn't get along with my daddy. And, I got to, and that's not quite what goes on.
He's going to look at my internet history. I know. He knows.
Let me destroy the phone, the laptop, the iPad. It's got to go.
So what if I like to wear that? Come on.
So it's, that kind of stuff is pretty prevalent in our realm. So, I was kind of concerned that folks may see that when they got a psychologist, well, I don't want to listen to that because, I don't give a shit what they have to say and don't trust them, don't like them. So the idea is to, kind of help ease that stigma, ease, that fear of going to see a psychologist, or should I talk to a psychologist? I think it's valuable. And there was a time that I didn't think it was valuable.
Right. And in full disclosure, we have both utilized the services of folks like that.
Yes, and I still do. Still do. But I'll tell you, early in my career, I had a really bad experience with a police psychologist that was on contract for the agency I was trying to go to, and it was it was a really bad experience. This
and not an uncommon one either.
Right. And I shared what happened with several folks, and so many others had that same experience. And they're like, this doctor was, out of their mind, just would say ridiculous shit that didn't make any sense. And it just, like I said, it really turned me off. And from there, I'm like, I'm never going to go see one of these fuckers again.
No, yeah. And you always ran into that, like the girl in college, like, oh, what are you studying? You're out, you're talking.
Oh, psychology.
Psychology. It's like, run! She's batshit crazy.
I'm gone.
We need to pose that one to Greenberg when he does show up.
We do.
But yeah. We were talking before we went on air about like these negative experiences. I had one, and this was like during the hiring process for an agency. This is some years ago, and I can't believe the agency. I didn't take the job. They offered me the job, but I didn't take it. And it was like shortly after I had my interview with the shrink, and I go in, and the guy's a complete asshole to me the entire time. like yells at me at one point.
I know exactly.
You know this guy.
I had a very similar experience.
And it's like, this is for an applicant, like,
yep,
psych screening, right? And I'm like, I go back, I see the guy who's coordinating through the my background and all that stuff. I'm like, man, I really screwed that up. Well, what happened? I tell him, oh yeah, he does that all the time. Yeah, that's just that's just how he does. The hell? That was, I walked out of there. I was like, God, what did, oh my God, something is wrong with me.
Well, that stuff sticks with you too.
Yeah.
So, after, and I went to that one as well, because he was retained by, another agency that I did work for, and I had that same experience, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Who does he think he is?
And why is he so angry?
He needs to be talking to somebody. I need to be over in the comfy chair or in the desk, and he needs to be laying in the comfy chair here telling me what the hell's wrong with him. Yeah. So, those things stick with you. So then you have these experiences with shrinks for whatever reason. They're not a good experience. And then you get to where you are dealing with some shit, and someone's like, hey, well, maybe you should go see the police doc. Fuck that. That guy's crazy. He's an asshole. He don't like me anyway.
Why would I see him? I came here, and I'm going through the hiring process, and he yells at me and basically throws me out of his office. Like, hell, I want to talk to that guy.
If I want to do that, I'll just go to the sergeant's office, and I can have somebody yell at me there and throw me out the office.
It takes less time.
Right.
I'm pretty sure there's no copay.
I don't even have to schedule that visit.
I could get that any day I want.
Right. So, what? I'm trying to figure out where we're going to come around and where we're going to get the good point of psychologist Greenberg. I'm sorry. We're going to get there. We're going to get there.
He's there making notes.
So when he finally comes on, his episode is doomed.
Oh God!
But but it did come around. When I was a young officer, after these initial experiences, we had agency I worked for. We had an officer involved shooting, and the long and short of it, it was an accidental shooting, but it did kill a suspect. It was after pursuit. It was high tension, a lot of going on, but the community was really upset about it, and it was pretty stressful for the department. And they called a psychologist to come in and just meet with all. It was a small agency where we're talking 35 total officers. So a psychologist came in, and that happened to be Dr. Greenberg.
Which is good. Now, and I'm just going to insert something here, because you said that was a small agency. I know the agency, it's a small agency. It's a predominantly rural agency.
Yes.
And for them to do that's uncommon.
Well, and particularly at that time, we're talking about 2001.
More than 20 20
So,
yeah 28 yeah
we're talking 01.
Mhm.
So, that just wasn't a common practice. I think that was a good call. And I'm not sure if it was the sheriff or the undersheriff that made that call, but
the call was made.
It was. And so I met with Greenberg. Now, keep in mind that I was new, and pretty much our meeting was very short. He saw, and he right off the bat said, "Well, I can tell you're new. Everything is all smiles, and everything is all fun and great. You're early in your career.
Come see me in a decade."
And that's pretty much, was, I can see you're not really having any issues, and pretty much cut it short. And we have talked about that since. I said, it's crazy. We had that interview where you're like, man, I can see how everything's great, fine, and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. Then 20 plus years later, when I go see him, how the time has changed.
Yeah, but now, so that kind of takes us where I think we're going, is like what's going on with us, and what how do we get broken? What does broken mean? Is broken a thing? And I think any of us that have been doing this in any significant way, unless you've just hidden from calls and flown a desk for your entire career, I'm sorry, you're broken.
Right, I would agree. Absolutely.
You're broken. Yep. Now there's a broad spectrum of what constitutes broken. It could be a little bit broken. It could be like total fucking dumpster fire, train wreck, broken. Right? Most of us aren't on that end. Okay. But I think most of us, you do this 10 years, 20 years, more than 20 years.
You get awfully close.
Yeah. And just speaking for myself, the things that caused me stress on the job, it wasn't really like the blood and guts stuff. That didn't leave me, I mean, nobody likes to see it.
Sure.
But that wasn't the stuff that bothered me. It was like the drip. It was the internal office stuff, the managerial stuff.
Well, that's a huge part of the stress.
Oh, and on
the job is internal.
I think, and we'll talk about this some more as we go forward with the podcast. But I have a prevailing theory that a lot of our brokenness we create ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
We create ourselves.
Sure. I mean, some of it's going to come just from the nature of what we deal with on a day in and day out basis.
We eat our own.
But yes, we do not help ourselves be better.
No. In fact, we do the exact opposite. Not everywhere, but a lot.
Well, I mean, most agencies, even agencies that are doing pretty well, still have a lot of toxicity to them.
Oh yeah.
It's just there's still a lot of folks that have either authority or position in those agencies that are just create that stress. And you may still have a pretty good agency, but you have those cancerous folks in there.
Oh yeah, you could work for an agency, be on a great unit, doing great stuff, love all the people you work with, but everything outside that unit, dumpster fire.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep. And that's pretty common.
And the higher you go in the floors of the building, the hotter that fire gets.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we're doing it a lot to ourselves, but we started having this conversation about, why some things are happening. And we're looking at like, overall mental health, but then, you got these high profile incidents, right? We had, George Floyd.
Yes. Oh, well, that's the probably most profile.
Recently, we've had the Memphis Five, as they're calling them now.
Yep.
You know, and like with George Floyd, it was that racism narrative was pushed really, really hard. And I have a theory. I don't think Derek Chauvin was racist. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know the man's heart. I don't know the man's mind.
And most of us don't know him.
I mean, he may have a Klan robe in his closet. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Right.
I think he was broken.
Most likely so. Most likely so. And it's not to make any excuse. I mean, I definitely want to make that. You're not making an excuse for anybody's behavior.
Because somewhere along the line, somebody should have noted it. Somebody should have pulled him out.
And that's the point, is brokenness is not what we're proposing as any kind of excuse for what happened. It is, everybody's searching for the solution of how do we keep these things from happening? How do we keep these incidents from where it looks like officers are just have gone off the rails and now somebody is deceased?
Right. But in order to get that solution, you got to properly identify the problem.
Well, that's huge. And, I see, I think you think strongly, excuse me, that brokenness is a contributing factor.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you're right. If you look at, some of the symptoms you have when you're dealing with, whether it's stress or PTSD, anger's a huge one.
Oh yeah. And and you know what, looking at like issues that I've dealt with, in my life, I would say anger was the biggest one.
Absolutely. And anger was probably the biggest for me. And it was anger, contentment, but it was also what I call is that my flashpoint, where it didn't take much to set me off.
And see, I didn't even have a flashpoint.
See, I mean, mine was low.
I didn't have I was the opposite. I didn't have a flashpoint. I just swallowed it.
See, the littlest thing, it could be the most minor setback, excuse me, on a day off, and it would just set me off. It would ruin my entire day. And it could be something so minor, so minor. I mean,
now my wife may say I had a flashpoint because I would periodically I'd do something just like you said.
Right.
But most of the time I just internalized my anger to the point of it just eat me up.
Right. And in that low, that flashpoint being that way, where it would just set you off in a snap. The littlest thing set you off. Now on the job, I didn't exhibit it like I did at home.
No.
I think on the job is where I could internalize it and where I could kind of shift focus and put that game face on and function. And that's why most people at work, didn't know that outside of work, I'm struggling significantly. However, I think a lot of officers that have those anger issues probably are not able to manage that in the workspace. And that's where it's showing up.
Or they manage it. And they manage it in the workplace until they don't.
Exactly right. And then it rears it. And then you have, these incidents you have where someone's significantly injured. You have where someone's killed. You have a fatality that didn't need to be. I think you bring up a really good point.
Yeah. Something's happening. I mean, you go over to the guys in Memphis. Now, I think there were other factors.
Sure.
I think, whoever was or was not supervising them needed to be hit upside the head. I mean, and I love those kind of units. I think those units have tremendous value.
They do, but they also have a high risk.
Right. And you don't put some guy that's got a couple years on these
absolutely
units.
Not. Yeah, absolutely not.
And if somebody's got a problem and they're on one of these units, you really need to be on top of that. So I think I think there was a supervision problem, but look at these guys wail on him.
Well, I would love to know if there were any other, signs that obviously that we don't know. What kind of things came up when many of them had very short careers? They weren't there very long. And like I said, I don't think they should have been in a unit like that anyway. But that being said,
and that could, we could be off base. I mean,
sure.
Maybe that wasn't a broken officer.
This is our opinion, and our opinion, and $1.25 will get you a soda out the fucking machine. So, it's kind of take it for what it's worth. But I would be anxious to hear. Was there any other things? Were there red flags that came up? Did they have incidents where they blew up over something? Got angry, got pissed off, either yelled or blew up at somebody, or had another use of force that was getting, where we're starting to cross that line, and it was either overlooked or downplayed or minimized. Were there signs that these guys were broken and were on the edge of, on the verge of snapping or just becoming loose cannons? And it's hard to think that there weren't some.
Oh, no. I mean, something is going on, and it's not just those. There are other incidents where you're looking around and you're going, I don't think this guy's a particularly violent person. I don't think that there's racial animus. I mean, again, I don't know, but right. And I do think the racial animus component tends to be greatly overstated.
I agree,
especially when you look at law enforcement agencies, particularly urban law enforcement agencies, large agencies, where you got people of every race, color, creed, gender, whatever.
Very diverse.
They're all in there, and everybody works together.
Yep.
So I do think that's a little overstated. So, like, what's going on? And, I think the brokenness thing just can't, I don't think it can be underestimated. And I think it's not, it's not sexy. It doesn't make for good headlines on CNN and whatnot.
Sure.
But you got to talk about it.
Well, you do. And I think it all comes back to, everybody's searching for, solutions for strategies, ways. How do we keep these things from happening? And you need to look at everything. And this is just one component of it. But, you also have, when you have somebody that is maybe displaying where you're like, man, they are really, he is just always angry and really on the edge. Where do you go with that? That becomes the challenge, because do you approach the individual and talk to them? Do you go to a supervisor and talk to a supervisor? How is that handled? Because again, now you have this, the mental health is such a negative thing. When you tell somebody that they're not acting right, they're not going to go, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I am angry as shit and flipping out over everything. The chances of them responding in that kind of manner, go, yeah, you're absolutely right. I have lost my shit every day this week, and I can't figure out why. Or they're probably gonna be like, no, I'm fine. I didn't get a lot of sleep, or
as a good buddy of mine who's actually going to come on the show soon and talk with us about his experiences. He'd blow the hell up,
right?
He would blow a gasket 6 ways to Sunday. And if you asked him tomorrow, he might forget he blew a gasket.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And ultimately that was a contributing factor to, him not being on the job anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And then we got to look at the hiring process too.
Well, that poses the question too, that when you're talking about brokenness, there's people in the world have other conditions. People come into the job already with either depression or some underlying depression or anxiety.
Especially now.
Yes. So if you come into the job with those things, I don't think that's something that should keep you out of the job, but it's something to be aware of. But when you're hiring folks that you're reducing the hiring standard. That's where it gets dangerous, I think.
Yeah, well, and look at it this way. I mean, if you look at all the statistics, and there've been a bunch that have come out. There was that big, I think there was like a New York Times piece on teens and adolescents and rates of depression and anxiety. So I hire that kid, maybe they're coming out of college, and they're 22 years old, they're 23 years old. Chances are they got some baggage of some sort.
Probably.
All the statistics point to it.
Sure. And having, that's not necessarily something to keep somebody out.
No.
But when you do have some glaring issues and red flags, you have things that you normally would not hire somebody having, and then you decide you're going to lower that standard of hiring. Now you're putting somebody that you've already had deemed before is probably not a fit for the job, and you're throwing them in a job that's high pressure, high stress, and high responsibility.
Or you're doing the other thing, right? You're seeing that, and you're not hiring them, right? You're not hiring them because that person doesn't walk on water.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen this happen. I see it happen at place I've worked. And oh well, they got a blemish, a little this, a little that, and they're not a good fit. Okay, all right. But now I get that guy. I mean, just as clean, smooth, nothing, never had anything, no adversity, no trouble, just the absolute golden child, right?
Yep.
Now that person's faced with stress, adversity, toxic work environment, assholes on the street, you name it. Right?
Right.
And they start getting stressed.
How are they going to handle it?
Right. How are they going to handle it? Does that person have any coping mechanism? Can't speak. Coping mechanisms that are built up?
Any of that are healthy?
That's probably a separate conversation.
Yeah.
But how are they going to handle it? And I don't know. What do you think?
Man, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think we're posing questions with questions. But
this is how we end up chasing our tail and
right.
ultimately drinking more while we're doing it.
Thank goodness. Well, I mean, it does make it difficult because when you're hiring, you do need to take a lot of things into consideration, but you have someone who has no life experience at all. It can be a gamble because they may not adapt to the amount of stress and responsibility that's thrown on your shoulders coming into the job. However, you have somebody that has a lot of issues, they may be predisposed to snap or not hold themselves together on the job. So it's finding that easy medium. And not only that, I think it's having that, not I want to say watchful eye, but, having people be aware of noticing signs and being able to catch some of these things early before it comes to someone choking someone to death, someone going nuts and
just beating the ever-loving shit out of somebody for no good reason.
Right. And I have a hard time believing that there's not signs in there.
Yeah.
There's not clues that is coming. Maybe not.
So you were a first line supervisor.
Yes.
So did you feel like you were in a good position to see that if you thought it was happening?
I felt I was. I try to do a good job of being out on the street. And I think most of the folks that worked on my platoon would probably agree that I spent a good deal of time out there, going to calls. And it wasn't to be big brother. It wasn't to oversee. And, I never wanted them the officers to feel like I'm hovering over shoulders, but I wanted to be
So
able
what
to,
you were saying is you were leading, you were not managing.
well, that's the goal. That is the goal. But I wanted to be comfortable with the fact that I'm out there. I'm not out there to criticize. I'm not out there to micromanage, but I am out there to observe, and I am out there to supervise. And if there are issues that, and, I should address them, and the same with the sergeants, they should address them. But I really do think there's a huge value in having the pulse of the folks that work for you, per se. And you can't get that through a 10-minute roll call. You can't get that through you stepping in the roll call for 5 minutes before they hit the street, and then you don't see anybody give it. You've got to see people out there, how they're functioning, whether it's on a call for service, whether it's on a traffic stop, whether it's at a motor vehicle crash, whether they're directing traffic at a stoplight. You got to be out there talking and interacting, particularly as a first line supervisor.
And I look at some agencies that I might be familiar with, that even the first line supervisors are so buried under bullshit,
and that
they can't get out from that.
Oh gosh.
Or then you get the person that wanted the stripes and they didn't want to do the things you just were talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have that too. I mean, you have plenty that are glued to the office, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to take care of all the administrative duties," which you do, but sometimes a lot of those administrative duties are a little too compounding, and I think places could do a little better job of trying to reduce that. But it seems like administrative duties are increasing, exponentially, not even just for supervision, but for the officers themselves. But
the point is, you feel like you would have seen it.
Yes. I mean, could there have been an officer that maybe would get by that I would not see it? I mean, when I was as a platoon commander, I think I had at one point I had 32 or 34. So that's 34 officers. That's a lot. And that's a pretty good amount. So it's hard to see everybody every day. I made it a point to make sure I definitely would participate in roll call, not just stand there, but participate, talk. And I'm always observing. I'm trying to look for, that's a good sound. I'm always, looking to see how folks
Don't tell them I was getting another beer.
I'm always looking to see how the officers are interacting. You can tell, but yes, to answer your question, I feel I did a good job of anybody of really trying to have the pulse of the folks that worked on my shifts, and if there was an issue or something or a red flag or a sign, that I would have picked it up, or one of my other supervisors, my counterpoints, like one of my sergeants, would have picked it up and said, "Hey, I noticed this." And then that would spark me to start looking. Well, let me take a look. Let me come out.
And I'd say that, I think you, and you're not alone, but you are more of the exception than the rule. And that most agencies, because, they're so, that toxic mix of being busy with ego, with this, they don't care until they got to care.
Right. Well, and I don't want to paint this picture that I'm like this great supervisor out there, that I'm just fantastic and pat myself on the back, because, I'm not. I feel I did a fair job. I do feel confident that most of the folks that work for me would probably agree that I did a fair job, and they generally were content being assigned on my shift. But I think more is just, I gave my effort. The one of the most important things to me was how is everybody doing? How, when we come hit the street, how are they doing mentally in their heads? Are they focused? Are they upset? Do we get bad news and people are disgruntled? And, we tried to kind of,
But again, I would say that is the exception rather than the rule.
Sure. But it was the folks, they were the most important to me. And how they were doing was very important to me. It was also stressful because you can't make everybody happy. You can't keep everybody happy all the time, but you do the best job you can of keeping spirits up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And watching for when things may be going awry.
But I think all too often nobody notices and they go, how the hell did this happen? Until it's happened.
Right. That's true.
And suddenly the news crews are pulling up to your headquarters, and you somebody's going to have to find an answer. So we identify these things. Let's say you got that supervisor that is invested, that supervisor that's actually paying attention.
Yep.
They notice something going on.
Yep.
And again, everybody's situation is different. Everybody has different symptoms, different triggers, different things that are gonna be eating away at them. But you notice it.
Yep.
And then we come up to the idea, the subject of the agency shrink.
Back to the shrink.
Right. And, it just kind of takes me back to like that Lethal Weapon,
Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah.
He drove her crazy. Sergeant Riggs.
But, a lot of people don't trust them.
Yes, absolutely. And I was one of them for a long time.
And I wouldn't trust them. And so, I went when I did get to that point where I was like, oh my God, I gotta see somebody. I went to the agency shrink.
So did I, actually.
But I told the agency, I went separate from my agency.
Right.
And made sure, because the agency shrink was like, well, this is like a claim, and and you noted for insurance. Here's cash. Just swipe my card, something.
Right.
I mean, no, I don't want them to know.
Right. And there's, now there's nothing wrong with that. I went and saw the agency shrink,
but I trusted that person that they weren't gonna do me like that.
And I think that's a fair trust. When things got really bad, for me, I finally got to a point where I said, I'm going to make, an appointment, but I scheduled it myself. I called, I didn't go through the department because I did have a little concern about going through the department because there is the stigma is, am I now going to be put on the radar that then he's flipping out and he's freaking out.
Yeah. And to be fair with my agency, I don't think, I think that the people that I cared the most about, or that I still care the most about, I don't think they would have said anything. I don't think. There are others. No.
I will have to say, for my agency that I was with when I went, I do believe, for the most part, if I scheduled something through the department, it would be supported. And I think more so now. I know they have gotten better with it. For those that listen, there's still room for improvement.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing better with it. But I don't think it would have.
And we are sitting here busting on a lot of things.
Yes.
Related to law enforcement leadership. But overall, yeah, I will concede, I think agencies are getting better about it.
Yes. And I don't think that there would have been anything negative with the agent with me going. I don't think I'd have been put on any kind of rental. I think I'd have been, and anybody would be really alarmed or overly alarmed. I don't think I would also be called in going, hey, we think you need to take vacation. I don't think anything crazy like that, but it's in your head. And I think that's part of the problem is officers get these ideas. It's what's going on between your ears, or it starts telling you, man, if they find out you're going to go to the shrink, then, they're going to put you on admin leave, or they're going to take your gun, or they're going to take your police powers. And there may be some agencies out there. I don't think mine would be like that.
There definitely still are.
But I still didn't go through my agency because, again, you have those things going on in your head. You have, those concerns. So I strongly encourage for someone that thinks they want to talk to the agency doc, if you're uncomfortable going through, then schedule it on your own. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what it takes to make you feel a little more comfortable at going and seeing and talking with somebody, then schedule it on your own, and go see him. And I went, and I did meet with the doc for our agency. Now, I will tell you, he wasn't a good fit for me. And that's another aspect of it as well.
Because you got to find somebody who's a good fit.
Absolutely. I mean, one for your agency probably is good on a respect that maybe knows the agency, may be familiar with you personally, and as far as you're probably not doing your copay for so many visits because you're going through the agency. But he wasn't, there's nothing against him. It just wasn't. I didn't feel. I went twice. I didn't really feel like it was really. I wasn't seeing any. I just didn't feel like it was doing anything helpful for me, and we just weren't hitting on anything. So that's when I reached out to Dr. Greenberg, because I was familiar with him and I had a good impression of him. So I thought, let me call Greenberg and see if I can't get an appointment with him. And then I did, and total night and day difference in the experience. And I was like, okay, this is where I'm coming for a while from now on. So I would say if you go to your department psychologist and you feel like, well, that fucking sucks, or you don't like him, or hey, that jackwagon, I don't want to talk to them no more. They didn't help. Then go seek out somebody else. Go and find one on your own that is a fit that you feel comfortable with, coming in there and having a conversation about what's going on.
And I think you and I were both lucky, and again, I think I had my situation, you had your situation. They're very different, very, very different situations, but we both had supportive spouses. We both had because we have a lot of overlapping friends. We had supportive friends.
We did.
And I'll speak for myself, is that, and I think a lot of cops don't do this. A lot of people don't do this, but a lot of cops don't do this. Is part of your wellness is having something that has nothing to do with this shit. An interest, a hobby, a thing, whatever it is, I don't care. Something that is not part of this.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion. I think that's important.
Some way
to detach from it for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's harder. The longer you're in the career, the less you detach from it.
And it gets different.
Yeah,
but
you're right. I guess, and that would be incorrect. I think as you progress and you get in that middle area, on the tail end, you start to detach. At least for some, I know I did. On the tail end of it, I started detaching from it a lot. Whereas early on and then kind of middle of the way through, you're kind of all wrapped up, ate up with it, where it's pretty much all you're about.
Right.
Eat, breathing, sleeping.
And we both, and again, we have overlapping friends, but, you got a bunch of cops together. What do we talk about?
Work.
Yeah. Well, now we bitch about work.
Right.
But nobody's sitting around like, when you're 22 and you're like, let's talk about this gear, this car, this bullshit,
this chase, this shots fired call.
Nobody gives a shit.
Right. Now it's about finding some solutions to how to fix all you fuckers out there that are, going through some shit.
Yeah, exactly. It just changes. It changes a lot.
No doubt. Yeah.
But and then, the other thing too, and so if you don't end up going to your agency shrink, Greenberg's going to probably kill us when we keep saying shrink, but
I know. But he's not here, so he has no say.
If he was here, he could correct us, but he's not. But
too bad.
But it's not easy to find somebody.
No, it's not. It is difficult. I actually had, and we'll kind of back up. When I went to the department psychologist when it wasn't a fit. I didn't. I was like, man, I was at a loss because, like, I got this shit going on, and I need to do something to start getting a handle on things. So, and I didn't know where to go, and I actually reached out to a friend who was a former officer, who went through a lot in his personal life, and basically, he was on the department 20 years, maybe, I think. And when I mean he was an ass kicker, he was an ass kicker. He run and gun, he did it all, and he was someone that I highly respected as a street cop, a downright street cop, badass dude. I mean, respected. This wasn't somebody that was a keyboard warrior. And during CIT training, he came in and spoke and talked about some of the things he went through. And, to hear him stand up there and talk about how the demons came to him and started coming back and how it affected him so bad and what he went through, I was like, holy shit, this guy's like, he's rock solid. I mean, how is this guy having an issue with it? But he talked about all the things that happened and him taking the steps and all the stuff to recover. So, short story long, I reached out to him and said, hey, can I meet you for lunch? He knew when I reached out and said, can I meet you? He knew exactly what was going on. And we sat down, and I'll never forget, we sat down at this little diner, and he talked for a few minutes and said, hey, and I was going, and he looked at me and said, how you doing? I said, okay. He said, and he looked right at me and he said, you're dealing with a lot of shit, aren't you? And man, right there, that got me. And and that says it all right there. I mean, when you're at lunch about to get a nice, delicious burger or something from the diner, but you're getting upset just by someone saying you're dealing with a lot of shit. So he started working to find me somebody because he has connections through different things. So we started making some calls. And he actually came up with somebody that was referred. Actually, I think he had two. And then I had suggested Greenberg. And we thought about it, and I talked about it for a while and thought about it. And then I ended up making the decision to go with Greenberg, who I was already familiar with. But I did have in my back pocket someone else that, he had gotten through contacts that said, hey, here's someone else, not connected to the department, but is relatively close to your area, but not connected with the department. And you can give them a call.
Yeah. So, and see, I think my thing,
it's hard to find now.
Cause yeah, well, I mean, you feel like, nobody's going to get you and nobody's going to understand you.
Oh man.
Right?
That's so true.
And
so true.
And people will tell you like, cause my wife did this. Well, they hear everything and they nah.
And you're like, they didn't hear this.
They didn't hear this. And
I heard everything but this.
We're coming. I mean, not like we're special as cops or anything, but we're coming from, you talk about people in public safety, military, things like that. You're coming from a perspective that the average person, the average psychologist or psychiatrist,
right?
No,
absolutely. No. Yeah.
They're not. No. And I'm just talking out of my rear end at this point, but I don't believe that most of them are up for that.
No, probably not. I think out of the nature of their profession, they're in a profession that wants to help, so they want to help people, and I think they would want to do everything they can. But I do think that, yes, that's
but they're over there in the corner across the room scribbling in the
envelope. They're over there writing their...
This guy, needs lots of meds.
They're over there making an appointment for their therapist because they're going to need therapy after hearing all the shit that you talked about in there.
he is fucked in the head.
There was a meme on that was on LinkedIn, and there's a fellow on LinkedIn that does all these great memes, and I always give him a shout out.
On LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn, yeah. I mean, and he's a cop, funny. I mean, and I've never met him. He's somewhere Midwest, I think, but somehow he's on my LinkedIn. He puts all these cop memes on there, and they're freaking hilarious. And I'll have to put them on our website. But there's one on there, and it says, "My shrink after my session," and it's this German Shepherd dog. He's laying on a beach towel. And he's like, looks like he's passed out with a beer hanging over. He's got this beer hanging on the shepherd, laying on the beach towel like he's conked out.
My therapy dog after I've told him all my problems.
yeah, it's something along that lines. It makes me think of that, but that always gets me laughing. Because I'm thinking, man, he's gonna need his own therapy after talking to me.
Yeah, and like, but. And we're, we've been talking a while now. So the real takeaway is there's a lot of reasons we get to this point, and it's hard, but find that fit, find that person.
Absolutely. And if you're having a hard time finding that, reach out, try to reach out to somebody that might be able to help you in that search. Because if you're in your head going, man, I really need to talk to somebody about that, or I feel like I'm dealing with some shit and I probably should. If you think I probably should talk to somebody, that means you should have been talking to somebody by now. And that's not a negative thing. It's not a dig. That's, not trying to be negative to anybody, but that is, if you are thinking that, then yes, it's time to, start taking a proactive approach to your mental wellness, your resiliency, your emotional health. That is a warning sign. That is a red flag. That is the billboard sign. It says time to take a step.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the police training that everybody goes through over God knows how many years in the academy, like you're doing DT, and they're like, okay, well, if this happens, tap out, right? Well, same is true with life.
And I will, because I'm sure there's folks listening from my former agency, and they probably know exactly who I'm talking about when I talk about seeing a psychologist. I don't want to deter you from seeing that psychologist just because he wasn't the fit for me, and I wasn't getting it. Does not mean that you won't go meet and go, oh man, this is good. This guy, we're hitting on something. It's definitely personal. So I would encourage you, don't go, man, well, I can't go see our police psychologist because I listened to a podcast. They said that guy was no good. I didn't say he's no good. I said he wasn't the fit for me. And I have all the respect for him. And I think he tried, and he actually had some good suggestions. It just wasn't, you just know.
It just wasn't what you needed.
Correct.
It just wasn't what you needed.
So I don't want to discourage anybody from, if you're from that agency, from going and seeing who they have retained there.
Now Greenberg, on the other hand, the amount of people that I've referred to him.
Oh, I've sent a lot to him.
I feel like I need like the free T-shirt or something.
A T-shirt would be good.
Yeah,
I got a business card. It feels that doesn't seem like it's quite
exactly. I feel like I've earned the free T-shirt or something. The dinner for two coupon or something.
I also throw out there for anybody listening, for the two people that are listening,
no one is going to see me in a Borat thong.
Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have an email. We are badgetothebone@gmail.com. Send an email. If you're like, man, I'd like to speak to a psychiatrist. I'm trying to find somebody. We will help you find what you need. Doing this for a little while, I have developed a lot of contacts within the, public safety, first responder, mental health community. And so has Al. We have, and really just from 20 plus years on the job. So we have contacts. We can, help that search. That's what did it for me. I had to, reach out to somebody to help me. I need to do something. Help me. Let's get that first step. So shoot us an email.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're this is only episode 2. episode 2, Wingin' It. That may be the title.
Winging it.
You know, if we're going to talk a lot about this. I mean, this is why we exist. We're going to talk about police mental health, but you know, leadership's a major component. Ooh, you know, yeah, and we're going to be talking a lot more about leadership related issues. But if you have issues or things that you want us talking about that you feel, you know, need to be aired, let us know.
Absolutely. And if you have, you know, experience that you want to discuss, you want to come on, shoot us an email.
Yeah,
we'll get you on.
Yeah, I mean, our guest today canceled. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Byron.
So yeah, you know, we want to get every perspective we can. So everybody has a story. Everybody has something they've gone through.
And so, the more stories we get out there, I think the better everyone is.
I do. I think it starts to make it so it kind of dissipates a lot of the stigma with it, because you start seeing that, you know, it becomes common. Well, geez, and that's kind of what did it for me, is I started hearing stories from cops that I really respected, that were, you know, outstanding street cops, and to see that, one, not only that things affected them, you know, you see some of these guys, you're like, man, they're like a Superman, they're super cop out there, but to see that things affected them makes it real. And the fact that they have the courage to come out and talk about it and say, this has affected me, then that really helped me go, okay, yeah, you know, it's
well, and something happened too, you know, that because a lot of the folks we know, they got 20 plus years on the job, right?
Right.
You know, 20 is about the average, right? And because we're at that age, and it was probably within the last 3-4 years when I noticed that it was like, something happened.
Right.
Something happened. All the shit's breaking down.
Yep.
And, you know, I had one buddy, you know, again, he's going to come on and talk about his story. You know, he started getting help. And then I saw you starting to deal with your stuff. And that prompted me. And I think that when I did, I shared my story and others, and that got a couple other people to start doing it.
And I'm the same way. I mean, as I started to discuss things, people reached out to me. And I said, well, this is the things that helped me. Maybe call this person, make an appointment here. And, you know, like I said, I've definitely referred several to Greenberg, but beyond that, you know, just suggestions that I made, you know, folks have stayed in touch with me, and I've been like able to kind of help them navigate through some of their difficulties.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. All right, Denny, I think that's going to do it.
I think that does. I think they have listened to us for long enough, my friend.
Yep. Hey, if you like what you're hearing and you want to drop us a line, please do so at wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com. We are badgetothebone@gmail.com. And we also have a brand new website. You can check that out. That is badgetothebone.com. Badgetothebone.com. We might even have a little swag up.
All right, a little swag like that. Hey, also, on your podcast platforms, make sure to follow us. If you like what you're hearing, I don't want you to miss an episode. We got a lot of stuff coming up in the future, so make sure to follow us on your platforms. But in the meantime, for all those still on the job,
be safe
and be well.